Here's another slide from that February 2020 meetup, business process review during sourcing crisis, because back then we felt that it was only China that was impacted. So we focused on talking about what to do during a sourcing crisis. Here, once again, is a slide from that 2020, from that February 2020 meetup. So let's go through this real quickly, but I will talk about Amazon advertising and PPC in the later part of my session. But all this still applies. How much of a moat have you built around your listings, your brand, your business? If you look at your Amazon listing, can the messaging, can the content be improved? Could you optimize the listing and the content with new search terms that you've either set aside, that you've told yourself one day you would look into, or perhaps these are new search terms that keep popping up in your PPC campaigns that deserve your attention that you were not aware of. Okay. So PPC is generally considered relatively low-hanging fruit when it comes to expanding your visibility on Amazon. But what about your brand store? If you are a brand and if you are brand registered, have you worked on that? Are there pages that you could reformat? Are there new pages you can build out? Are there new ads you can build out to point to store spotlight pages and so on and so forth? Revisit your Amazon ads. Best practices, dive into your campaign structure and see if you're implementing best practices. Are there targets where the ACOS is too high or not meeting your goals that require more tuning? Potential other activities that you can do during the sourcing downtime is off Amazon marketing, Facebook marketing, Google marketing, Instagram outreach. And some unique considerations is that generally speaking, Amazon's algorithms, whether it comes to their PPC algorithm or their organic search result algorithm, search algorithm, A9, it tends to factor in your most recent 30 days worth of metrics and performance and history. So if you're in a niche where the other sellers are running out of stock during that time because we were having trouble importing goods from China into the US, then the seller theoretically with the shortest amount of stock out period will prevail. So so it's just some things to consider. The next slide, again, from the February meetup, talked about. So I guess, again, this is very, very early on with COVID-19. So the first point is that we are hearing conflicting reports about COVID-19. So since then, it seems like we've gotten to know more and more about it. But back then, I think the majority of the world seemed to be in the dark. Okay, so at the end of point one, I'm putting in there that assume there's no end in sight, even though our understanding and our perspectives about the virus can change week to week, and it definitely seems to be the case. Second point, despite the fact that China was closed off from us for a few weeks back in February through March, it has been and still will be for the foreseeable future one of the most efficient sources of products. And the third point was about the Canton Fair. This was speaking to the fact that flying out because this is happening right around the time, right before the Canton Fair, people were concerned about attending the Canton Fair, or the possibility, even if it's going to happen, whether we can attend the Canton Fair. And so the third point was to assuage concern, saying, you know what, this might be a blessing in disguise because there's a lot of friction to attending the Canton Fair. If you're able to overcome the friction, great. The visit can be very productive, but there's just so much legwork. It costs a lot of money to do so. It's not just simply a plane ticket per se. You have to pay for a hotel stay, potentially a translator, and it's pretty exhausting. So as much as it could be a productive exercise, you're saving yourself a headache with the Canton Fair being canceled. So we found out that there was the virtual version of the Canton Fair with various levels of success that occurred a few weeks ago from today. Okay, next slide. Once again, from the February meetup, was talking about the supply chain. So the first point is talking about just-in-time sourcing, a supply chain that relies on the just-in-time methodology. And what just-in-time basically means is that your supply chain is either so thin or a good way of saying it is so optimized that as soon as you bring products in from either a factory in the US or a factory in China or India or South America, as soon as you're bringing in those cartons or those pallets, you're able to sell them. So you barely have enough extra stock. Okay, so this methodology is personally something that my account was. I wouldn't say we were implementing it, but we were practicing it because of all these other factors. Just because to build up a buffer requires capital. We'll get into that a little bit more later. But a just-in-time supply chain is most sensitive to supply shocks, which sellers are increasingly experiencing today. This is talking about February 2020 and seemed to prevail through February, March, and even a little bit of April and May even. Okay, so the pros are that the just-in-time system is the leanest operation. It provides a highest margin, lowest capital. It's the ideal balance of producing just enough and stocking just enough product to meet demand perfectly. The cons, most prone to supply chain shocks, and we certainly saw that. The next point to consider is buffer stock, which is extra stock closer to the point of fulfillment. Now, with all of us being US sellers, there might be a few of you who are international sellers. This stock would sit in warehouses that are close to the point of fulfillment. So if you're a US seller, buffer stock means pallets, cartons that are stored in US warehouses that are ready to go at any moment notice to be shipped off to FBA, to be shipped out to say Deliver.com, to these fulfillment centers, so that they could fulfill your orders for you. And the pros is that it's great for weathering supply uncertainties. So those of you who did maintain buffer stock back in February through March, April, May, you did very well. So you were able to continue replenishing your stock at FBA so that as many of your competitors ran out of stock and were just left with really no means of restocking because China was shut down, the supply lanes were shut down as well. I'm sorry, I meant the shipping lanes were shut down as well. You had a buffer stock, and you were able to push that stock into Amazon's DCs for FBA. So that was great. Now the cons, the obvious cons are it requires extra capital, right? You need to have extra cash on hand to be able to afford buying and maintaining buffer stock, and also incremental costs. So the cost of overhead, the cost of storing it at this warehouse. Okay. Now the next level removed. So if you look at the three major bullet points, we go from just in time to buffer stock to advanced stock. So just in time is we've got that stock right here, immediately available for customers today. We barely have enough product in stock. Buffer stock is where, okay, we have a little extra on the side that in case we need to fill in some of the gaps, in case we're running short on inventory in FBA, then we can simply move some of the inventory from buffer stock into FBA warehouses. Now, advanced stock is another level of preparation where you've got extra stock, but it's stored at your factory's warehouses. Now, the pros are that it's a buffer to your buffer stock. It's a great balance to address some of the cons of just-in-time and buffer stock. The cons is that you need even more capital. And as we've seen with our globalized supply chain, unfortunately, having advanced stock does you no good, because if you have advanced stock in Brazil or China, but your fulfillment point is in the US, your order fulfillment point is in the US, you're not able to get it over here into the US. So there's some cons to that. Now, as far as extra capital, usually the hit to your pocket is the deposit you pay for the PO, right? So if that PO is not delivered to you, then you don't need to pay the balance. And usually the balance makes up the bulk of of the COGS of how much money you need to buy inventory. So in some ways, having an advanced stock, it is a financial hit, but it's not as painful as having to pay full price for your inventory, but then not having the ability to make that inventory available for sale, to bring it into FBA or your fulfillment or your fulfillment houses or fulfillment partners. Okay, again, another slide from the February meetup. So just real quickly, project management delegation. Are you following the 80-20 rule? It's very, very tough if you're a solopreneur and your margins are thin and you don't have much cash on hand to be able to delegate a lot of what's on your hand to other teams. In other words, it's hard to afford it, right? Especially if you don't have much money on hand. So, but still, if there's any room to afford offloading some of these tasks to somebody else that is very painful and is not worth your time and will free up your time to focus on more productive responsibilities, you should consider that. So evaluate all your processes, your software, your systems, your team members, your vendors, yourself. Are your business processes optimized? Can your software personal team be more efficient? I think this is more along the lines of the fact that if everything is running smoothly, you were focused on sourcing, but now sourcing has ground to a halt back in February. And you're just sitting there kind of dazed as to not sure what to do next. I think these were just really questions to pose to see if you could, find other tasks to fill your time with to be more productive. So you're not just you're not just spending idle time sitting there twiddling your thumbs, wondering what to do about sourcing. Are your tasks complicated? Can they be streamlined? Can they be better organized? Do you have the best overlap of software for efficiently maximal results? And what I mean by that is there's a lot of software out there for e-commerce, for Amazon. A lot of them have a lot of overlap of features, and they all have their own price points. So the question to ask yourself is, can you trim down the number of software platforms that you're paying money to? Can you minimize the overlap between software solutions? Are you not able to avoid that? So just some things to consider during some downtime. Okay, so finally, we're getting to the meat and potatoes of what is truly more relevant. We're talking about this presentation, which is the the impact of Q4 2020 on your sales and your processes. So here's one chart. I believe this is probably from UBS, the bank, where they showed the percentage of total retail sales that is made up by e-commerce. So e-commerce as a percentage of total retail sales in the US. You may have seen different variations of this chart, of this information, but you can see that over the last 10 years or so, e-commerce has chipped away gradually at the total number of sales, a total number of commerce in the US. And then suddenly in 2020, and really it's only the first half of 2020, we see this monumental leap. Okay, so in this next chart, we see the same thing. So this chart has been making its rounds on the internet, where once again, we see e-commerce go from making up 5% of sales to 16% of sales. So there's been some would look at that and say it seems like it's a 10% increase, but but it actually really is a. Oof, do my math. Well, it goes from 5 to 16%, and then overnight from 2019 to 2020, we see a jump from 16% to 20%. So, um, what this graph is conveying is that to go from 5% to 16%, which feels like a 10% step up, that took 10 years to for that to occur. But to go from 16 to 27%, which is okay numerically, if we're subtracting 27% by 16%, there's that 10% that we're talking about. That only took 8 weeks to occur, which is absolutely mind blowing.